half sock, half cash. Did you see my meme, by the way? So, so they made the meme half cash, half sock.
Yeah.
Then I changed it to half cash, half pork.
Get the MRR and then we get the mic. Cool. What do we expect? Honestly,
Luca,
I looked at all of the latest thumbnails and they're looking super hot.
You must have the same experience where your feed is just AI slop, like constant AI slop. But you guys, it's actual, your takes on what's going on. It's not AI rubbish. But it's nice to have that on my feed.
We had our first video that hit 100K views because of the contrarian take of Codex took over Claude. Why do I always have to make this Barcelona versus Real Madrid? Coding an app is the new starting a podcast. We are three dudes. We just started a podcast.
it's incredibly reckless in this world to not learn AI.
Everything is code. I recently realized everything is code. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night from wherever you're watching. This is episode 12 of the God Mode Pod, and I'm repeating myself again, but we have the fullest docket that we've ever had. AI land is not sleeping, and there's some crazy stuff happening. In the beginning of the week, I was messaging my friends here that Anthropic peaked. I thought Anthropic peaked, Codex is taking over, but a few days later, actually, we have Anthropic shaking hands with Elon, and yeah, feels like the run just is going to continue. We're going to talk a lot about this. We're going to also talk a lot about news that came out from OpenAI, from Cursor, from Elon, from SpaceX. Those are the main topics of the day again. But hey, we also have a friend of the pod here, and he's going to talk with us about agents, especially Hermes agents. Alan has been building agents since before this podcast existed, which is quite a long time in AI land. I actually saw today, I think he posted that he's using his agent to learn a new language. So let's get started. Alan, maybe a quick one on you. A quick introduction, and what are you using your agent for? How are you learning through your Hermes agent?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I have been using agents for I think ever since OpenClaw went viral. Like my folder, which I use my Codex and my Claude Code to build it. So that's called Moltbot. So you can imagine that's like almost ancient history. Just like back in the day when it first went pretty viral. For me, I think about my background. I'm a software engineer. I would say I'm more of a tinkerer. I would say I'm just like experimenting and building stuff. So some of the stuff I have built with the agent, some of it is useful for other people. And a lot of it's stuff that I just love to use in my day-to-day life. So yeah, you mentioned today I built a language learning agent. So I like getting AI feed, interesting topics from X, and I get summaries of that. And then I just have my agent pull in that information, and I use like a Google model to get that transcript into audio. And then I have like a listening class in Mandarin. I used to live in China a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So you're translating the general news on X into Chinese. Why don't you pull the data from a Chinese news source? Because I think it's even more interesting to learn what's happening in China. No? I would love to know what's happening in China. I think that doesn't really reach our feeds.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are Chinese users that use X as well. They get through they use their VPNs to get through. But yeah, there's other platforms that they use, like Little Red Book, and there's other users. There's actually an influencer, a Chinese influencer who's here, who works in the social media space, and she gave me a free Kimi K 2.6 early access key as well. So there is a lot happening, especially in the open source side in China, right? It's probably the most important, interesting thing that's happening in China. And I lived in China for like 3 or 4 years. I have left and don't have as much connections there. But this is what I want to do. I want to get the connections back. I want to see what's happening in the open source space, because the best open source models are Chinese, right? They're not racing that ultimate race for AGI. They're trying to get cost optimized models that everyone can use. And it seems like in terms of business perspectives, that's what everyone kind of really needs for cost optimization. They're much more interested in that. And so what I wanted to do is, my feed is already chock full of AI. I told my agent I want you to pull in topics that are like Chinese language users, small accounts interacting with big accounts and big accounts as well, and then pull that in and give me the summary of it, some vocab, and then like give me a transcript with using a skill to just give me a structured way to have a listening class, and that's all just within like 10 seconds.
You mentioned that you're using. Are you a Claude fan or a Codex fan? You're using Claude Code or Codex? What's your go-to?
So I have both subscriptions, and I've flipped between. I was always the biggest Claude fan, I have to say, but recently I saw your video that you made with the rate limits, with the controversy with OpenClaw, and now that you can use OAuth through Codex, just with the rate limiting and the user experience, I decided to use Codex last week, a few weeks ago, and my user like the speed, the sharpness. Like I feel like the latency of the requests, everything just feels much sharper with Codex. So recently I've switched, and I now use Codex every day. I'm a big Claude fan, but I think just with what's happened in the last few weeks, I'm moving over. So I'm one of those that's downloading Codex.
It's funny because, and that's what I mentioned in the intro as well. In the beginning of the week, it really felt for me the same experience. I spent the first 2 days of my week in Codex, and I barely touched my Claude Code. And I was even kind of sad that a few days ago my Claude Max subscription renewed, because I would not have renewed if I found Codex earlier. And like the stats here show exactly the same numbers, where Codex has overtaken Claude Code in downloads, and it's not even close. Where Codex had 46 million downloads, where Claude Code only had 491,000 downloads. That's like how much? 100x difference, which is pretty insane. And based of these stats, I sent you guys on the WhatsApp. I think Anthropic peaked. There's no way back here. Guys, have the rest of you been playing with Codex yet? Ben.
Yeah, no, I haven't been playing with it yet, but I've been going to this like weekly meetup in Valencia with other hackers, and it seems like every week there's like one person who's gotten Codex pilled and have made the move over. One interesting thing that I did kind of hear this week about the difference between Codex and Anthropic, which is related to this, but it's kind of an interesting design decision that I think OpenAI made, which is surprising to me why Codex is still taking off. Basically, okay, so to GPT-4o, people loved GPT-4o because there was a personality to that model, but then apparently this week someone kind of reported that like OpenAI made a very intentional decision with GPT-5 and like the 5 models to strip away that personality aspect of the model. And so that is probably why a lot of people prefer, I think, Claude when it comes to personal assistance, right? Claude Code or Claude for personal assistance, because you want a personality with your personal assistant. But when it comes to coding, you might not actually want that kind of personality, that character, and GPT-5 doesn't have that character. They made that decision on purpose, right? OpenAI did. And so perhaps that's why people like Codex, is because like, okay, the model just does the task that you're asking it for. It's not pushing back. It's not kind of asking questions. It's not, doing these things, which is great when you're building something like Hermes or OpenClaw. But when you're coding a product, you just want it to do the thing. Like when do you decide to use Codex versus Claude Code? Like what type of task will you say, okay, this is better for Codex?
I think we have a team who use both at the company I work for, and I think the guys who do a lot of front end work, they like Claude more for that. The thing is, in my view, if you use the right prompts, if you use the plugins for good UI, you can definitely get as much good out of Codex as Claude. I think it goes back to what you were saying about you just want to get the job done. And in my experience, when GPT 5.5 came out and I started using that, just the ability and the sharpness of it just felt a cut above Opus 4.5 and 4.6, or now 4.7. I think the token economy use of GPT 5.5 combined with the fact that I feel like Claude Code Opus is more of like a startup. Let's get it done quick. It likes to cut corners. It might do things, but might not do it in the best way. Whereas it feels like ChatGPT will the GPT 5.5 will make sure you do it right and high quality from the start. And I just like that about Codex. So when you combine all that with the issues with the bug that Claude Code had and the rate limiting, I just had to switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Makes sense.
Especially the token economy. It's like, it's not really how many tokens in, tokens out. It's also how many tokens you actually need to get a task done. And I feel like in that sense, GPT 5.5 is more efficient to actually get something done in the right way, especially compared to Opus 4.7. Is that in line with like what you mean, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I know the token burn is much higher for Opus, but I think it's the rate limiting. I feel like I can use like a $20 subscription with Codex. I feel like I get like as much as $100 with Claude Code, and I think that's even after they said that they fixed the caching issue that they mentioned at Claude. So I don't know exactly what's going on, if there's still an issue with that harness or it's just the
Yeah.
model itself is much more efficient. But that's my experience of using both.
Well, talking about rate limiting, I think this might have been the end of rate limits at Claude from now on, because I think on Tuesday, 2 days ago, Claude announced that they agreed to partner with SpaceX, which will substantially increase their compute capacity. This, along with their other recent compute deals, and they're making a lot, means that they increase the usage, means that they are able now to increase the usage limit for oh, what the fuck is going on here? This basically means that we won't be rate limited anymore, and that our usage limits basically 2x now. And this is the second tweet that they wrote. They're doubling the Claude Code's 5-hour rate limits for Pro and Max and Team plans, and removing the peak hour limits. And I've been really noticing the difference when I'm using Claude, but this is a crazy partnership, in my opinion, and I'm not sure if we have been talking about this before or speculating about this, but Shamat was right. Shamat mentioned that Elon should just partner, or that Anthropic should partner with Elon, and yeah, they did, and this is very impressive. The one thing that Anthropic was lacking to actually continue their growth was compute and was power and was energy, and now with Elon together, they I think they can continue their journey up and their generational run, where where Anthropic was dead on Monday or peaked on Monday, on Wednesday they're completely back. Ben, what do you think here? For you, this is awesome news, right? You downgraded from 200 to 100, and now with your 100 you probably can do double as much.
Yeah. Well, no, I then last week, like 2 days after, I went back to the 200 because I hit that rate limit. So I'm back on the 200, and yeah, no, I looked at some of Elon's tweets, and it's interesting. He very specifically wanted to caveat that Anthropic had access to Colossus 1, right? So Colossus 1 was built a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, and it's about 100,000 to 200,000 of the Hopper, the previous generation. Now XAI and SpaceX have moved on to Colossus 2, right, which is 500,000 of the newer Blackwell chips and all of that. Basically, Elon's giving them like the last generation, kind of the older data center, and he's moving on to the new one, which is like 3 to 4 times as powerful. It is interesting that Elon's like striking up all these deals, whether it's with Cursor, whether it's with Anthropic. Like, I'm wondering if SpaceX and XAI, like they massively overestimated how much compute, and they were the only company in the world that basically had all like thousands of these data center racks just sitting empty, and they maybe didn't even know what to do with them. I don't know. That's crazy to think, because like everyone is. Yeah. What do you think, Greg?
If you listen to some of the recent interviews with Elon, he is saying energy is the currency of the future. So I think he has seen this all true, and he just a few steps ahead of everyone else, and he invested in the future, and he knew that compute is not going to stay unused, and he might not be winning the AI race, but this with Grok and XAI, for whatever reasons, right? You cannot win on every front, but now he literally has a partnership with the best model creators in the world, and they will continue to work together, because the next tweet here as well is SpaceX and Anthropic have also expressed interest in partnering to develop multiple gigawatts in orbital AI compute. This is the next level, right? This is the energy solution for the future, and if Elon can do this together with Anthropic, then does he actually still need XAI, or does XAI actually just become a provider for Anthropic? What do you think?
So yeah. I agree, and I think this is where Elon's getting a little carried away, because on one end, Elon hates Sam Altman and he has like a personal vendetta against him, but over the last month or two, it's become increasingly clear that Anthropic is the more closed AI provider out of the two, right? They're limiting what you can do with the models. They are, cutting off the Department of War and making very like harsh stands on like what you can do. So Elon, I don't know why he's I know why he's partnering with Anthropic, but he's doing it not from like a theoretical standpoint of I align with how Anthropic is running their business. Like even 3 months ago, he was mocking them. He was calling them misanthropic and all of this. He just literally is doing this because he has the compute. And this deal is probably paying for all of the training of the Grok 4.5, Grok 5 that's going to come out and all. So I get why he's doing it from a financial standpoint, but Elon is someone who I at least feel does have a fairly solid moral spine when it comes to like being truth seeking and all of that. And for him to hand all of the compute over to Anthropic, which is a company that frankly is pretty close sourced and really cares about like they're almost deciding within the company what is acceptable and what's not in this AI world. It doesn't really align with like Elon's kind of morals when it comes to AI,
Yeah, but I've also seen some tweets where they say indeed that this is a pure win for XAI and Elon. Like Anthropic is going to pay them to use that compute, right? It's not that they're giving it for free. So, and then like Elon is thinking about, I want to create a $1 million people colony on Mars. Like you need funds for that too. And Anthropic is the fastest growing company in history, right? So like if they continue growing and they continue paying Elon, then Elon has enough money to fund everything. And 10 trillion or bust is what he tweeted recently. Well, I think this deal can put him well on the way to actually reaching that $10 trillion mark even sooner than later.
He said that 10 trillion or bust for his own net worth. Is that what he said?
Yes, I'll find the tweet. But Peter Diamandis basically tweeted that Elon currently basically is worth about 2% of the GDP of America, and the last time someone actually did that was Rockefeller. And then Elon commented on that tweet at 10 trillion or bust.
God, that's crazy.
One thing I keep in mind when I'm seeing these new plays coming along is that these are all three individuals with huge egos that want to be the best and win. And I feel like Dario has been put in a position where his hand has been forced because Anthropic started falling behind on their compute. And the recent acquisition of Cursor makes SpaceX not only a compute provider to Anthropic, but also one of Anthropic's largest customers. So whether Dario or Elon are on good terms or not, I think in this case became almost irrelevant because their companies are so tightly linked. And by teaming up, I guess, yes, they could beat their mutual nemesis. If you looked at it from an art of war perspective, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I think that's where we're at with this partnership.
Exactly. Alan.
Yeah, I'd also say I wasn't actually too surprised by the partnership in some ways, because compute is so constrained, right? So compute is what all these providers really need. What I thought was most interesting was what you pointed out about the orbital satellites, where we host the future infrastructure, where all the inference will happen. Because if you watch a lot of interviews from Elon Musk, why is he interested in orbital computing hosting models in space? It's the fact that now the build out of all the AI data centers, there's a lot of opposition from people in terms of the build out, because of power usage, right? But if you're in space and if you have solar panels in space, you have no clouds, right? So you got pretty good access to sunlight to power it, but you're also in space where it's much cooler, and a lot of the data center build out, they have to build with cooling in mind for the GPUs. So he, I think, is positioning himself for the future, where as a space company, he's already deploying the satellites. Why not host the compute and the infrastructure of the future in space, where he doesn't have to deal with the issues of the build out that we're having on the ground?
Exactly. And
I think
he's been
it's important because if you try to focus on both of them being the infrastructure and the technology layer, it's very hard to do two very difficult things. And I think Anthropic could get an advantage by allowing SpaceX to build out their infrastructure and just focus on building the right technology. Whilst if OpenAI is trying to do both, that's where things get maybe a bit more difficult. And I think I would compare it to NVIDIA spending much more of their effort on designing the best chips rather than being TSMC and producing the wafers.
Yeah, indeed. He's looking into the future, right? Like if you listen podcast from months ago, he's been saying this, he's been planning this, and now he just has the perfect partner who is going to pay for it, right? That partner that grew their revenue, what is it, 90x over the last year alone, is now gonna pay for Elon's infrastructure build outs. Well played, Elon. Good job. Friend of the pod. You should come on the pod, Elon. Hey, why not? um, well, I kind of like this one as well. Be Anthropic. You need compute. You sign $100 billion deal with AWS for 5 GW. Then Amazon writes you a equity check back. So Amazon has invested here. Boom. Sign a $200 billion 5 years with Google for 5 GW. And get a $40 billion equity check. Boom. You got more equity on the balance sheet. Sign 30 billion with Microsoft for Azure capacity, and Nvidia writes you another check, and then Microsoft writes you another check, and then FluidStack writes you a check, and then SpaceX gives you GPUs and more megawatts, and then CoreWeave gives you more capacity. Total committed spend 380 billion. Total committed power 11.3 gigawatts. Ben, can you put this 11.3 number in perspective somehow?
I'd have to look it up, but it's a lot of power, right? And
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that 0.1 terawatts is where kind of the US power is, right? So 100 gigawatts is where we're at as a country. I think when it comes to data centers, they've just added 10% of the kind of country's data center capacity in compute. Yeah, and it's interesting to see all these deals where it's not only like, hey, we'll buy from you guys, but it's almost like the right to buy in for Google, for Amazon, for FluidStack is like also equity, right? So they're making purchases in compute at perhaps a fairly favorable valuation. I don't know exactly, but on top of that, Google is getting $40 billion in equity into Anthropic. Amazon is also taking in equity. with Anthropic. So everyone wants a cut of this, and yeah, it's
But
crazy
that's awesome.
how tangled. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome to have such a network of like the biggest companies are all rooting for you, which is impressive, right? Like if you think about OpenAI, Sam Altman, like there was even some messages that got leaked again from the times when he got kicked out as CEO, and then after the weekend he was back. But like he doesn't like he everyone wants to see Anthropic win now because everyone has stake in this company, whereas OpenAI is basically doing the battle on its own. They don't have such a network of amazing partners. And I saw this photo on Instagram, which basically explains it very well. Like it visualizes it all pretty good. One sec. So that's basically currently who owns Anthropic, right? If you look at this, so the founders own 47%. Then you have Amazon owning 17%, Google 15%, VC institutions 14%, and then Atom Capital, I don't know what that is, 8%. I also heard, for example, that Zoom invested some money in Anthropic many long time ago and owned about 1% of Anthropic. But if you look at the Zoom market cap, like quite a lot of that portion of the market cap is actually Anthropic value. So maybe Zoom is a buy now, especially with potential virus coming up. I don't know. Not financial advice, but like it's very interesting to see how all these different companies have a stake in Anthropic. And yeah, that means Anthropic will provide for them, and then they will also root for Anthropic. It's yeah, this business strategy is actually. Ben, you said Dario is not a business guy, but don't you think he played well here?
I think he played pretty well. I mean, look, he's struck up a lot of deals. Yeah, I don't have too much more. Rick.
Next up, we stay in the Claude universe, and I personally think this is actually a consequence of this partnership with SpaceX, because now, since Anthropic suddenly has leftover compute, they can actually improve their product even more by putting that compute to work. So Claude announced dreaming in Claude managed agents, which basically means that your agents in Claude are automatically updating their memories based on your conversations you had. And this is something that we've already seen in the agent space, where OpenClaw had some sort of memory, then Hermes has a better memory, but Claude is just learning from all of these things and is implementing this themselves. What do we think here? This is awesome development for the Claude app, right? Ben, I think you first.
Yeah. Well, so Code with Claude 2026 happened this week, and what was interesting about it was almost entirely like platform announcements instead of actual model improvements, right? So dreaming outcomes, this multi-agent, there was a webhook announcement, and then routines. I think they talked about that. But like none of it was we made the model smarter. It was all about infrastructure, running models in production, and basically moving towards this agentic world. And so that kind of tells you where I think Anthropic thinks the mode is. I think Sam Altman has also been talking about this for years, but Claude is already probably one of the best models. I think we've been saying that, although GPT 5.5 has definitely made a lot of strides and it's pretty close to it. Models are kind of commoditizing to an extent, and Anthropic is now saying, let's build this entire ecosystem, this infrastructure, so that you can run your agents on Claude, right, on Anthropic. So that was kind of the big takeaway from here, is like between this multi-agent orchestration, the dreaming concept of, that your whole agentic workflow is just getting better while you're sleeping, right? Which people are pretty fascinated with. That was the big takeaway from this whole Code Claude announcement. Yeah.
And it kind of confirms our thesis from last week as well, where the abstraction layer becomes more and more important. The place where people actually interact with the models compared to abstraction and orchestration and harnesses is becoming more and more important, and have the ability to now outperform the base models, right? If you orchestrate better, then you're going to get better outcomes than if you just give one huge prompt to a frontier model. Alan, what's your experience here? Would you rather have a well orchestrated swarm of agents or one frontier model?
Yeah, I will answer that. Before I go that, I want to reiterate the idea of the dreaming part, which I
Yes.
very much like. what's interesting to me is a lot of the guys who worked in like all the innovations with these language models in, for example, the guy who spearheaded Google DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, he was a neuroscientist by training, right? And I find it so interesting how a lot of the artificial intelligence sort of metaphors are all psychological in nature. They're related to the brain in humans and our memory. And how do humans consolidate their memory? We do that by dreaming, right? And replaying certain things in our mind. I think so. I kind of like the naming that they've gone with here with dreaming for multi-agent orchestrating. For me, where I'm at with multi-agent versus frontier models, I'm in my view so far, I won't necessarily, if I'm going to build something for users that is not a very like that is a very open and has a lot of use cases, I would much rather have a frontier model and be very much in the loop one at a time. If you're going to orchestrate multi agents at the same time, the drift for these to get in their own way and step on their own toes is much bigger. So they can, if you're writing code, they can have conflicts, and managing their work and the state and which ones are finished and so on. That's a bit more of a complication. So you might want parallelism by multi agents at the same time. Like the way you build it, there's a lot of patterns you can use, right? You can use one agent which is doing a task, planning, operating and doing the task, and then another agent that's validating that, so testing it. And especially when you're using agents, you might want to have a fresh context. So rather than an agent marking its own work, so to say, and using a bias and sunk cost fallacy, it would rather have a fresh context and review that. For when I'm actually building software, I'm very much in the loop still. I would not let like 10 agents at once go off and do a whole load of work, because in my view, I'm still the bottleneck for a lot of stuff, especially if they're complex. I would only do that when I already know the system that I want and it's a repeatable pattern that the agent can go and do. And the scope for the ways that it can make mistakes and go off the rails, I already know all those, and I can kind of correct them and correct for that in a scale or a prompt and tweaking the implementation of that. So that's what I'd say for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. I do think there is gonna be a big shift in like people actually realizing this now, that you don't need a frontier model or even an expensive model. Sonnet is not that expensive, but you can use an open source model that's even 10 times cheaper for easy tasks like finding something or replacing or indexing your files, right? You don't really need the best of the best models for that. But I personally haven't really found a solution for that yet. I'm trying to orchestrate this myself. We're going to talk a bit about orchestration later, but one of the things that Ben submitted as well is the Jevons paradox. Wait, is that the one? Yeah, Jevons paradox, which basically comes down to inference got 100 times cheaper this year, but still the compute bill went up. So we're using more tokens, like tokens go down, but we also started using more tokens. And if we put some numbers on there, that basically means if tokens get 100 times cheaper, but we spend 10,000 times more tokens, then our bill goes up by 100x. And this is basically playing out right in front of our face, right? I clearly see this in my usage of tokens. I'm assuming you guys as well. If you're orchestrating agents, if you're using your agent, your Hermes agent, there's quite a lot of thinking. There's quite a lot of distribution of intelligence. Yeah, it's quite an interesting observation, Ben. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting phenomenon that a lot of people just don't really grasp or understand. They just think, oh, well, these models are gonna, get cheaper, and then it's gonna compress, and then it's gonna become a commodity, and the platforms aren't gonna make money. But I don't know. Think about it this way. So every price drop will unlock a new economically viable use case. So at $60 per million tokens, you could afford legal contract reviews, but then at $5 you can afford support chatbots. Then if you go even kind of further down, right, at like 5 cents, you can have like all these multi-agents that are kind of working in tandem, and that they're, be able to build out specific things. So basically, like every single exponential drop in like the price, it just unlocks more and more use cases that are basically unfathomable today. So, we're getting into the world where perhaps every single decision that you're making, whether it's the app that you're pulling up on your phone, or every potential feature has been built out, and you can say, yeah, I want that feature, I don't want that feature, even before you like stepped into the office during the daytime. So this concept is like for sure gonna continue, because it's continued across tons of other things. Like, remember when even streaming Netflix used to be such a pain, it used to be expensive, right? And then now like you could stream like 5 different things at the same time, and it unlocked just a new capability. Yeah, so go ahead, Alan, you had something.
Yeah, to build on that as well, I think when all these models got so good at coding, I think everyone was shouting to the rooftops that software engineers were going to be completely automated. I think Dario has said this, right, as well, that I think entry-level folks will have that problem. But because of Jevons paradox, as you mentioned, because the price of all these things, for example, the cost to produce software has now gone so low, the demand for it also goes so high. So now I think you'll actually see more demand for software engineers, because even though it's so easy to produce the software, there's actually more demand for it. You see this even in, for example, when they automated getting your money from banks with ATMs, right? The number of bank tellers actually went up, right? Because the cost to run a bank went way down. Everyone else was using ATMs to get their money, and they could open more banks and provide better services for people at the till much more efficiently. The paradox means that even though there's an abundance and costs go down, because we have an abundance, we'll actually have more demand.
Yeah, and each token that's being used or generated or spent is also more capable of doing things. And we are far from everyone using this technology. And I'm seeing a future where basically everyone is going to be spending tokens and spending money on tokens as well. Like right now, it's idiots like us. We don't know how to code, but we can now build apps. But it's probably we're spending 3 to 5 times more tokens than an actual software engineer would spend when they're using Claude Code. That's an assumption I make. Might be wrong there in terms of numbers, but like it's idiots like us who actually spend quite a lot of tokens and who are highly benefiting from this paradox playing out in real time here. Ben, you submitted this one as well. So yeah, basically idiots like us, right? Just because idiots like us can build software now doesn't mean software is dead. The SaaS apocalypse has been happening, sort of. But anyone can bake bread in their home right now, yet 99% of us still choose to buy it from someone else. Ben, why don't you intro this one or share your thoughts?
Yeah. So Farza is, first of all, an amazing creator, builder, all of that. And he's so right with this kind of concept that the software industry is not going to disappear. And Alan, you were just talking about that too, where it's unlocked more capabilities and you guys to be able to build more features. But this baking bread analogy really drove that home for me, I think, and almost kind of rethought how I think about, is software dead and all of that. Bread is like really a tiny commodity market. Like not many people are baking bread, even though everyone has the capability to do so. Essentially, like, yes, it's possible to vibe code your own application, but I think I would agree that most of our friends will not be vibe coding their own applications, their own things for this and that, unless they're really like wanting to be technical and kind of do that. They might try to vibe code something to like get an understanding of how it works initially. But in the long run, I do think that a lot of people really do want the software to be handed to them. And perhaps they may, kind of try to vibe code something and then it may work a little bit, but then they're like, let me just give this to a professional. The professional will be able to do it. And that's the same when it comes to me, right? I've never baked bread. I go to the baker and I buy my bread from them. And perhaps the bread costs a lot less than it did in the past. But I do think it kind of resonates that, most people will not be building their own software. I don't think that to be the case. They want to go to a professional and they want to kind of stay in their lane of whatever that is. And then the thing that he said, simple products are complex. Like, I will always be happy to pay someone to handle the nuisance. That's just really kind of echoes like what we're talking about with like the kind of baker, going to the baker analogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like the baker has been fine-tuning their recipe for years and years and years, and you're paying for experience, right? And it's the same with a SaaS tool that you're using. They've probably been building and fine-tuning this, and they've been talking to thousands of customers to fine-tune how this thing works. If you're now gonna like think of a Salesforce, for example, right? Like they had thousands and thousands of enterprise customers. They had millions and millions of data points. They've been fine tuning this thing. They've been integrating it everywhere. And if you're now going to try to build your own CRM, then yeah, it's probably going to break and it's going to be a pain in the ass. And it doesn't have all the integrations. And it doesn't have all the knowledge that Salesforce has built in. Yeah, you can say, build me a Salesforce clone, but is that going to be the same? I don't. Would you trust it as much as would you trust Salesforce? I personally wouldn't. So yeah, makes total sense in that perspective as well. One of the to stay in the compute side, we just talked about Jevons paradox. But one of the things I just learned was that Amazon bought a chip manufacturer called Annapurna Labs quite some time ago, an Israeli startup. And that startup turns out to be creating chips now. And if Amazon CEO said in their letter that if our chip business was a standalone business, our annual revenue run rate would be 50 billion. And if you think about that and you compare that to other chip manufacturers, that would basically be, I think, the second largest chip manufacturer in the world. But because of US export rules, they're not allowed to export these chips. So they can only create this for internal usage. Ben, I know you have a history at Amazon. Were you there when Annapurna Labs got acquired? And do you have some background information on this, maybe? You're muted.
Yeah, I don't have any background information on this. Yeah, it seems like every company is kind of trying to play their hand in this whole like chip business. And it's interesting to me that, this indicates that Amazon has $50 billion worth to kind of just spend even internally. Like, I wonder if they've been doing this to build out their own models. I know they haven't really come out with a model that at least has, yeah. Go ahead, Rick. You were going to say something?
I think Amazon is amazing at investing in the future. And they invested in this Annapurna Labs, I don't know exactly when. Maybe let's ask Grok.
In 2015.
In 2015. So yeah, 11 years ago, Amazon invested in this labs for the future potential of chips, right? And now they have basically a whole chip business under themselves. But because of the regulations, they cannot really monetize it to their potential. What I found impressive as well, other news that actually happened today is this week, is that Amazon basically open sourced their supply chain services, which is another, it's huge news, but that's another testament to Amazon investing into the future. This is not something that just happens. That just happens, right? This is something that they started building 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now the supply chain is so robust, and they have what did they announce recently? 1 hour deliveries in the US? Like, now everyone can actually make use of that delivery system, which they've been investing in for years, and now it's going to pay off. So it's just impressive to see how Amazon, kind of just like Elon, thinks 10 years ahead, invests in things that then come to fruition and that then become actually the big revenue drivers. Same with AWS, right? Probably was a cost in the beginning, build it for themselves, but build it so good that now basically the whole internet runs on it. So yeah, it's just kudos to Amazon. And Ben, you still no regrets for leaving that company?
No, I don't have regrets because I wanted to build my own thing, right? And it was a great learning experience. But it's an amazing company, and this side of the business was closer to where I was when I was there. But yeah, I'm curious to understand. I need to dive deep into like why they wanted to kind of open source this whole area of their business, and like what the kind of motives and motives behind that, right?
I mean,
were
I think it
yeah.
makes total sense, right? They have the network, they have the couriers running around in every city for every hour, delivering door to door, and it is an industry that had to be disrupted. If I want to send something with old school post carriers, it's gonna cost me a lot of money because they don't really have that network effect. They're not driving around anyway. Like, right? They actually gotta go to places. Amazon is doing it anyway. So what's the difference for adding 3 more packages from a external supplier, from a third party? Like, it's a revenue generator because they're driving around anyway and they're paying their couriers anyway, right? So I think this is great. And I didn't really check the stock prices of like FedEx and others. But I know in Europe, it's very pricey to send some stuff around. Like, we literally use hacks like, hey, buy this on Vinted from me, so it only costs €5 transportation instead of 20. Right? That's literally the solutions that we have to come up with in Europe. And yeah, I think this is just going to disrupt another industry. Which, yeah, kudos to Amazon. Internet businesses turning into the real world. Anyone else had something on that, by the way? No.
Just very smart move from them. It seems like they have a good holding on Anthropic, and taking the play of providing compute in the future seems like a solid bet, especially when you consider Jevons paradox is going to continue growing that demand, and selling the tools, the tokens is the best way to go. If we go back to the baker analogy, I would say it's like selling the flour instead of the finished product, right?
We'll dive a bit deeper into agents, because the race of the agents is continuing, where Moldbot, OpenClaw, Claw, whatever, a few months ago was the big thing. Now there's a bunch of other agents either integrated in the big players' products, or you have News Research. I think that's a lab in Canada, if I'm correct, but I'm not sure. They came out with Hermes agent, and this is also why we invited Alan on the pod, because I saw that he's actually using Hermes agent to an extent that I had no idea that that Alan is actually using Hermes agents in a very efficient way. I saw this tweet comparing all the agents that are out there now. You have OpenClaw, you have Hermes, you have Claude Code, you have Codex, you have Gemini. And what I found funny is the last line, keep your data safe, where you have OpenClaw and Hermes as a question mark still. But yeah, Alan, why don't you introduce some agents and some use cases, what you're using agents for, and also your experience with Hermes compared to OpenClaw specifically?
Sure, I can go into some of this. Yeah, I've used both, and I mean, you mentioned that Hermes, the setup is just way more smooth, and I mean, part of it is just learning and breaking and knowing how to set up stuff, but Hermes is I think you can give it, you gave the analogy earlier about Real Madrid and Barcelona. I think it's like Ferrari to Honda. I've seen this analogy. I think it's quite apt, where, OpenClaw seems to just break all the time. It's fine-tuned. It can do the job, and it's very powerful, but it can break a lot. And it's like a top of the range tool where you need to know what you're doing. Whereas Hermes is like a reliable Honda that'll just plug along and keep going.
Oh,
You'll even see
Hermes
that
is
when
the
you use
Honda.
it.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's the Honda.
That is.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because I mean, you'll see it when you message it. Like, it shows you the tool call in the chat, and it's like
Yeah, it
it's
does.
almost like that observability out the box, and you see exactly what it's doing. Like when you're messaging your OpenClaw, it's like it's going off, and you really don't know what it's doing, and it could be going off the rails unless you've really configured and fine tuned it like that Ferrari. So that's some of the kind of differences that you'll see. Use cases, I mean, the thing is with these AI agents, it's like whatever you do that's digital, to some extent, especially if you do it again and again, you can do with your OpenClaw or your Hermes, right? So, you know, you can use it for customer service stuff. So, for example, I'm living at this co-living now. It's a new co-living, and we needed feedback from the residents, right? So I created an agent which people can message on WhatsApp. Any problem, they'll send it a picture. They can voice message it. They can tell it an issue that they have, and then it'll be passed on to the management. Or, I don't know if you've seen this, but where like some agents where you like Chipotle's agent, someone messaged like, "Can you reverse a linked list?" And it was and I want a burrito, but can you reverse the linked list first in Python? And it gives like the code, which is quite funny.
Yeah. I saw someone doing that with the Whoop agent actually. But Whoop has an agent inside of the Whoop app, and someone says like, "Hey, how do I do a root square in Python or whatever?" And then the Whoop agent just gives you code back. So funny. Actually funny that we had the article open where you mentioned the Honda and Ferrari, like here, the Gary Tan from Y
This is
Combinator.
where, yeah, this
that's
is
what you
where I
just
must have
said,
got that
right?
analogy from.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I follow Gary Tan. So this is the analogy exactly that he's saying. I should have credited him. You obviously saw me say it. So
Yeah, it's your quote now. Funny that this article also shares what we shared last week on the episode where Claude Code reliability is just not good. Oh, and actually, this was happening right before the announcement of SpaceX and Anthropic. Claude Code was just not usable for more than an hour, and then right after, I see all my limits are reset, and like 5 minutes later, the announcement comes with SpaceX. So I think like there wasn't even an announcement that they reset all the limits because they were unusable. But yeah, I guess they just put that all away. Like they just announced the big news instead of focusing on the negatives. Sorry for
I mean, when you think
going
about it, they
going
had
off the
two big compute announcements. There was the Google 40 billion
yeah.
and the SpaceX one. But Alan, I was really curious about what you're plugging into Hermes. Is it GPT 5.5? Is it Claude? Or, you mentioned Kimi as well earlier today. What do you have, and what are you using them for? Like, which ones are you assigning to which
yeah,
tasks?
personally, just because OpenAI's OAuth is free, I just use ChatGPT 5.5 and I keep it simple like that. You know, I've used providers where, you know, it's for other fallbacks where it's cost per token, but you know, if I get a free like frontier model, then why wouldn't I use it? So I just use the best model that I can. And I find, you know, the best models can handle more context, they are faster, and they are more reliable at tool calling as well. Although I have found that with something like Hermes, much more than OpenClaw, if you do put a free model in there, Hermes is much better at getting it to do tool calling right out of the box and sort of trundle your way like that Honda to the end goal.
And you also mentioned translations. Are you using Kimi for that, or something else, or GPT 5.5?
Just to be honest, I think most models are pretty good at translations. I'm just using I'm using ChatGPT, the GPT 5.5 for that. Although I've used some of the free models, and I've used Kimi as well by other providers. And you know, the Chinese models, of course, they're built by the Chinese, so it's pretty good. If I'm doing my language learning in Mandarin, then I can also use that. But honestly, GPT 5.5 is good. It's free with OAuth, so I would tell anyone to use that.
Yeah, I think long term, this is the biggest risk of companies like Anthropic is these open source models that are actually competitive and being hosted on either people's local devices or people spinning up their own cloud GPUs. So I think that's where then companies like SpaceX that have the infra have a much more secure investment. But that's just what my personal belief, just seeing how fast all of the models are catching up with each other. And also realizing that whilst I'm working today, very often I'm not even using the frontier model like Opus 4.7 or GPT 5.5 because I want an answer faster and I'm not asking it something that's that complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like that's
I agree.
one thing what I
Sorry, Rick, you wanna
realized as
go?
well Yeah, no, to build on that as well, I actually let my Claude go and do some deep research of what models I should plug into my Hermes agent for different use cases. And one thing that I learned was that there's this thing called time to first token, and I didn't know that existed. But for that reason, it actually said, nah, you should not use Grok for these use cases. It's better to, for example, use a Kimi or use a DeepSeek because they have a much shorter time to first token. So that was something totally new for me that I learned. And yeah, it was quite interesting that with the research it came back to. And the other thing that that's been circling on my timeline about regarding Hermes agent or agent specifically is this sharing the screen. Introducing the printing press, a CLI factory and a CLI library built with Trevin. Most APIs suck for agent, most MCPs suck for agents, most official CLIs suck for agents. They waste tokens and time. Peter Steinberger started making his own because of this. And that's basically why we saw that tweet where Peter Steinberger spends how many tokens? 50 million tokens in a minute,
50 million.
while I only spend 25 million tokens a month. But here, this video is actually explaining. I'll start from scratch. So for
I saw that tweet of Peter. And I was like, what are the business opportunities here? Because he launched
yeah,
like
like
10
for
different services, all targeting agents with CLI. And I'm like,
mhm.
okay, so there's something here.
And for that reason, like you saw the example here, where if you just ask your agent to play a next song on Spotify, it would cost you 47,000 tokens. Like I can almost build an app with 47,000 tokens, right? So, like agents are just eating tokens. And I think this is basically a solution for that, or a solution, at least a way more efficient way of using tokens. I'm not gonna play it fully, but if you
Yeah,
then look,
and Peter released, I think he released all of his solutions free. So anyone can just send the CLI calls. But if you're saving an agent that much money, then you can make a small arbitrage and still be a useful tool.
yeah. Yeah, and like this thing, like the PrintingPress.dev basically combines different tools or different information sources into one. So like for example, if you want to use your agent to book a flight, right? It can do that already. And it's probably gonna eat quite a lot of tokens. But then there could be some other influences that impact your flight booking. Like for example, your favorite football team just played and they actually won, so they're going to the next round. So then then you can, like, your agent doesn't really know that. Now it could know these things. Stupid example, but like if I scroll through the catalog here, it's pretty impressive. Like for example, TikTok Shop, Yahoo Finance, a Docker Hub, Company Go, they're like all different skills that you could just plug into your agents. Where the previous APIs not really allowing good use or not really actually allowing these use cases, and now with this whole, what is it, a repo, you can just I just ask my Claude Code, scan this, see what's best for my use cases, and then plug it into my Hermes, and it came back with a list of 6 or 7 that were actually good for me. Plugged it into my Hermes, now I can just use it. Like, fucking beautiful, right? Alan, have you experimented with this yet?
I haven't played with PrintingPress.dev, but I'm definitely going to give it a look. I should say that, yeah, Peter Steinberg, a lot of his stuff I'm using. So, well, obviously I'm using OpenClaw, but for example, his Bird CLI tool, which plugs into X, which allows you to access that. That's the main thing I think with the agents, right? Is that in order to make it really useful, you have to connect it with a whole load of things. And if you don't have connections, then you can't really get it to do what you want it to do. So part of the reason why it's kind of difficult to build agents is, you'll see all the different examples here, but part of the reason why it's so difficult to build is it's kind of like the Wild West right now. Open source, there's so many different ways to plug into your agents to connect, whether it's CLI, APIs, MCPs. I think one of the things that I'm interested in, and I think might get some traction, is the idea of the new UX being the chat. And because the new UX is the chat, you're kind of limited by the text that you get back, right? Or the image. And so I've seen one of the things I like that Anthropic have done is with MCP, right, that they created. I've also seen as well MCP front ends as well, where you would have any app Like maybe it's your booking.com, you can connect it to their MCP, and suddenly you can have a chat with your agent, and then it could go and book you your hotel. However, it will show you a page with the bookings, given what it knows about you, that you like city breaks, and then you can go and click within the chat for whatever thing you want to book. So I think it's still early, and there still needs to be much more improvements in terms of the UX, where everything is kind of through a chat and people are connecting, but right now it's just text and talking to a bot, where you still need that user experience to really be improved.
What you see here is our docket that we have for the podcast preparation, and we submit our ideas, which are these tweets that we're looking at, via Telegram, and then they get into a database, and via MCP, Claude can read it, and Claude built a custom dashboard for me, and now I can literally chat about the topics with Claude and generate an introduction, generate an outline. Like, MCP really changed the game more and more with all the apps that I'm building and thinking about. Like, I'm thinking, how can I actually make this even easier to access? Because I don't want to go to 5 different apps. If I can do everything from one chat window with MCP, it's just such a better, so much better user experience. And it's also interesting what you say there about the future might not be apps, it might be chats. That's in line with, like, last episode we talked about the end of Apple potentially, or the end of the App Store, at least if everything becomes agentic. Yeah, that's a future that I definitely see happen, which I'm not sure if it's exciting or not. I'm not sure what I should think about it. Ben, are you excited about an agentic future, or are you kind of scared that they're gonna take away our app building, like the opportunities in building apps?
I think there's a lot of opportunity here, right? We were talking last episode even about just being able to sell to the agents, right? I also, though, like, I do wonder whether chat is the right interface. On one end, right? If you think about where most of people spend their time when they're at work, it's usually on Slack, and they're chatting. They're chatting with other employees. In this case, you're just chatting with a chatbot. That's like the Slack equivalent for, chatting with the AI has just been ChatGPT or Claude up till now. But is that really the right workflow, or is it more kind of like Claude and Codex are kind of going in this direction of, like, you're like listing out all of these like things that you want to be done, and they're all kind of working, and then you're like checking on them and seeing how they're progressing. Yeah, no, I mean, to kind of like tie this up, like, I think nobody really knows like where this is going to go, but the chat interface to me feels like the first iteration of this. There has to be like a better way to be able to, almost like a mission control area, right? Where you have everything that's going on and you can see it playing out in front of you, and then you can like double tap in, and then you could basically have the 10,000 foot view, but then you can drill down as you want into these different workflows, and then drill out as you'd like as well. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I really do think the more that we've gone through this path, like, I do think that SaaS is not as dead as people think it is. I think that the prices are going to go down, and they'll be compressed, but people really do want to pay for an experience, and they want to be able to see this kind of UI that accomplishes something, whether it's booking flights for me, or whether it's helping me with my chores for the week, something like that.
Mm. To me, what we're seeing with printing press, it looks like the new WordPress, and each one of these tools is can be considered an app or a plugin, and it's an exciting time. I think if you look at these as opportunities to be the middleman between connecting the agents with the real world, I think there are opportunities all over the world to kind of localize these CLI services, whatever it is. Because, I mean, for over here, you're seeing some things that are as simple as Domino's, food and dining. And I believe that in the next few years, everyone's going to be ordering their pizza not through a mobile app, but just by asking their device, hey, order me a Domino's pizza from the closest place. And if you're able to build that infrastructure, the plumbing that connects the real world to the agents of people, I think that there's multiple $1 million opportunities there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if an agent can do it, then you can put it into a front end, and front ends are not dead yet. People are still used to using front ends. They're just not used to using front ends that actually get shit done. So if you can take one of these things, connect it, and put a front end on it, I think there's still an opportunity for the next 1 to 3 years to actually build something useful that can serve people that wasn't possible before. So that's a very good point. They built the plumbing, and now we idiots vibe coding can go play with it and send it into the world.
Yeah, and then I also think there's this concept of like today you ship SaaS as a finished product. That's the same for all your users. Where the future might be that everyone has the same starting point, but the app is slightly adjusted according to how the user's preference is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So it's almost like SaaS can be adaptable on an individual basis.
that's actually
I
Totally.
mean,
one of
that's what
the
OpenClaw and Hermes is in a sense, but yeah, I think we'll see more of it from different places.
That's one of
Yeah,
the
I'm
best practices in design, in the 2026 design guidelines now as well, is generative design. Basically, that your design like shows the user that it actually looks like it's generated for you and it feels personalized. It's not super personalized yet, but I think we're gonna get to a point where actually websites will be personalized for the user that visit that website. Like we had this in 2019 where based on user preferences, cookies, and what we knew about a user visiting a website, we would show a different website. So it's been around, but now with AI, you can actually you can get this to a next level. You can even generate images or landing pages based off the user that's visiting and based off the data that you have on the user. So yeah, super exciting times and opportunities. Ben,
Yeah, and
anything?
I was just gonna say anecdotally with my business with the sales product, I've especially leaned into this where Sales Echo can be used by anyone from a founder to a real estate sales rep to someone in the insurance industry, and all of them have very different sales problems and kind of sales journeys throughout. So by having them just answer a couple different questions when they first log on to the platform, I'm able to hit them with like 10 different email marketing, 10 different emails like in the marketing flow that are specific for that industry. And then I'm able to like change the components of like the kind of page. So that instead of it saying like just start sales call, it'll say like, start this real estate call, right? So I'm really leaning into this because like Claude Code and all these AI agents are so good at being able to record all of this data about your users and then be able to think about, oh, well, these are your top 5 ICPs. Why don't you build this landing page for that person? Or and the landing pages are hard because I don't know about them when they've come to the site. But once they've created the account and once they've like filled out a few details, I'm able to extrapolate so much about the user, and I basically build off of previous users to understand like, okay, what do we think this new user will be? Will they be in the real estate world? Will they be in the insurance world, or will they be a founder? Things like that.
Yeah.
So I think we're going basically from like everyone sees the same user experience to industry or ICP specific apps to then, Rick, what you're alluding to in the future, where every single person is going to have their application that perfectly aligns with like how they would want to go through the user experience.
So guys, fireside round of updates. There's just too much news in AI land to be able to dive too deep into it. And the first news that we're going to comment on is, drumroll, SpaceX AI is announcing Grok build. It's not announced yet, it's not official yet, but it's coming soon. It's basically the Claude Code or the Codex by SpaceX AI. Again, the abstraction layer, the app layer, everyone is building it. Big labs are building it. I'm wondering who they are going to target, or what is this going to be for, or this is going to be the new cursor. How is it going to be? Ben, any thoughts on Grok build?
I wonder how long they've been working on this, because Cursor and that whole kind of acquisition deal probably threw a wrench in kind of that whole plan, or they probably had this in the works before a few weeks ago, I'd imagine. But at the end of the day, like, Grok build is only going to be good enough if the models that support it, that are supported by it. And my assumption is that Grok build will only work with like Grok 4.2 or whatever. And to my understanding, Grok is not that great when it comes to coding, right? So this is probably a good groundwork for perhaps the future of whatever Grok's models are, and if they are good at coding. But to me, I if I were betting on SpaceX's kind of coding roadmap, I would say that the cursor aspect is way more exciting to me than this Grok build feature.
I would say that the only value I could see coming out of something like this for Grok is that they are building their own harness for their own model, and maybe that helps them to maximize how effective it can be used. But its potential in being adopted is super hard to believe in it, given the competitive space it's entering.
Yeah. Elon has said they're 6 months behind in terms of coding. So I don't know. I might wait.
Next up, another XAI. Your customer support needs a voice agent built for the real world. So XAI is now also introducing a Jarvis-like voice agent. Grok Voice Think Fast 1.0 handles complex workflows with speed and accuracy. Any thoughts here? Who's going to implement it? Ben, you in your Sales Echo product, maybe this is useful, no?
Maybe it needs to come down to price. I did see that OpenAI just came out with their GPT-5 level real-time voice agent, and this is just another anecdotal kind of interesting thing that's a little technical, but I'll just get into it. So basically, GPT-4o was the only model that OpenAI built and trained it on a voice-to-voice level, right? So all of the voice AIs that we've been running on like the 5 series, what they're doing is they're going speech to text and then text to speech. But instead, up until this point, since 4.0, like that was the only model where they were training voice. So how do you train voice? Every single sound that you're making, they're predicting the next sound. It's way harder to train that way. And then GPT-5, the real-time 2 is using the GPT-5 class. So this is the next version of it. I'm way more excited about what the potential is of this, because the 4.0 model, when that came out with the voice, it was amazing, right? You had it and it was like able to, you were able to have a real conversation. It sounded like he or she was able to even like intonate like a human would, and she could speak fast or slow and all of that. And so I played around a little bit and it seemed pretty impressive. Just like, kind of like using the app and kind of doing that. But this is way more exciting to me than whatever Grok is working on their voice, because they're basically 6 months behind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Luca.
I, funnily enough, use the Grok voice quite a bit. Like when I'm driving, I just hit the voice and I ask it for like just some searches or some basic questions. And I've been enjoying using it. I can't compare it to anything else so far. But what seems to work about it is whilst you are speaking, it's already thinking. Sometimes if you take too much of a small pause, it actually interrupts you and starts answering. But then if you start speaking, it will stop and continue listening. And it's been useful. I've been finding it good enough to work with, and yeah, I think seeing these integrated into more areas of my life would be useful.
Yeah, I've been loving like Whisper Flow or Super Whisper as like just voice to text, not really having text speaking back, but that improves my life already so much. And then indeed, when on a walk, if these models, if I could, one thing why I'm not actually using it on a day-to-day basis, the listening to an AI model, is because they just talk like normal people. If I could 2x their speed of output, then I think it would be more useful for me to use. That's how I listen to podcasts as well, 1.5 or 2x. And then like I'm still faster reader, right? So I can just as well read while walking, but if they talk 2x, then I think it makes more sense for me to use these. So yeah, in that sense, maybe that's an app to create, a 2x voice agent that speaks 2x fast. Next up, Cursor introduced orchestrate, a skill that recursively spawns agents to tackle your most ambitious task with the Cursor SDK. We continue on the Cursor here, where Cursor is actually building out the best harness, I think, in class, and potentially like is going to take over. We're not sure yet. Codex is great, Claude Code is great, but Cursor is doing amazing things. Alan, have you been
Yeah.
a Cursor user?
I used it very early on. I was on the waiting list for Cursor, like 2023 or like very early in the first few million people that used it. But since then, I moved over to the coding agents. I'm more of a hacker. I like being in the CLI, like typing in the terminal. So that's more my style.
Mm-hmm. But then you don't really see the agents like you see here on the screen, right? How it gets orchestrated, or do you? You're not really a visual person then. You much rather see the text on the terminal.
Not really. There are different tools that I know that you can use for the orchestration where you can see them. But I have it old school with just a few different terminals when I'm building. That's the way I do it.
That's the interesting difference between a marketer like me and a real core dev like like Alan. I prefer to see things like this, how it actually works. And I rather don't touch the terminal. Like that's what the first thing I wanted to set up when I was trying to use OpenClaw was to be able to see how it actually is orchestrating and what it actually is doing. So yeah, that's funny, the difference here, right? Next up, OpenAI again. Codex now works directly in Chrome, and I've read that this is actually a plugin that's great, and the browser use and the agents being able to use the browser is finally on point for having good enough speed that it is useful. Beforehand, like browser use was slow, was buggy, but apparently now it's on point. It's great. I have not tried it out yet. Oh, actually, I think I tried it out without knowing it because yesterday suddenly my Codex started making screenshots in Google Chrome when I was refining a website. So I was like, huh, how is it doing this? I guess it's this Codex in Chrome. Awesome. Agents are extending their skills. So great news. Dan, anyone else? Yeah, the Hermes agent, we already double clicked there, right? But this video basically shows what a Hermes agent is capable of and what's the new stuff that they shipped. What I found most exciting here is the built-in agent Kanban board, and this comes back to what I just said, Alan. Seeing what an agent is actually working on and what it's doing, and that's why I think that Hermes is actually a great choice for anyone. You don't have to be a dev. You can go and use it, and it's built in. Like these things are built in. Awesome. I'm gonna continue explore this because I finally see something useful for me where I don't have to continuously fix and optimize. But they are actually doing this for me. So awesome. And thanks for also sharing all your use cases, Alan. Anything more on the Hermes agents? Because this is the last agent slide we have.
I think they have a cool name. I like the name Hermes.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Hermes, I just keep building with it. To be honest, it's just like see where I go with it. I think going forward I think there's definitely something in building Hermes or these agents where it's standardized and people like who are non-technical or don't want to invest time building can just one click and use it and connect everything they want out the box. I think that is a big gap at the moment. I don't think anyone's captured that.
And the memory, right? The memory is a differentiator. When I was explaining to a friend yesterday what the Hermes agent actually does, and they gave the example of if you could talk to ChatGPT in a thread and you start a next thread, like the memory is very limited and it doesn't talk to all your information. Hermes agent you plug into your files or your GitHub or your repo or your whatever you're syncing, and it's like it just automatically updates the memory, like we said about dreaming in Claude now as well, right? So yeah, I love to see these things progress as they are. Next up is Apple. Apple has been behind, and Ben said last week that Apple only has 12 months before becoming irrelevant if they don't move into AI. Now, Apple iOS 27 will let users choose third-party apps or AI models, including Claude and Gemini, to power features across its devices. What's funny here is that I don't see OpenAI. Where is OpenAI? Sam Altman loves Apple. It's like he tries to copy Apple everywhere, but then they exclude him in the models being used in the iPhone. Why is that, Luca?
Well, he did hire Johnny Ive from Apple to make his own killer device.
Everyone hates
But this
Sam, and
is the
everyone
thing.
is
This
including.
is the thing with Sam. I think he's extremely ambitious. He's started out as the leader in everything. He wanted to take over every single vertical that AI was introducing to this new era. And maybe it's spread him too thin, burnt a couple of bridges along the way, and we're seeing it in the partnerships that are happening.
Hmm. Yeah, he did indeed maybe throw in his own glass or his own door.
I also do think that Anthropic and Apple are more aligned when it comes to privacy, right? So, um, Google and Apple and Google have this weird partnership throughout the years where there's a lot of like I think Google pays Apple something like $10 billion a year to be the default search within
Huh.
Safari on the phone.
Yeah.
And so that's probably where the Google and Gemini thing comes into play. But then with Claude, Anthropic is much more privacy focused, somewhat to a fault, maybe some would argue when it comes to certain things. But then when it comes to this, I think they actually are more aligned when it comes to Apple. Whereas OpenAI is full capitalism, fully like, no, if you guys use our products, we may serve ads to you, we may train on your data, we may do all of these things, like so I mean, I've used Siri Siri and ChatGPT has been integrated for over a year now, and as I just said it, my phone just went off. um but basically, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The integration does not work at all. So I think this is them saying, okay, we're going to cut our losses. OpenAI is going to do their own thing, and then Apple is going to partner with someone else.
Next up is Mark Liu, and basically I started a challenge on my YouTube channel inspired by Mark. My first video, day 0 of my 30-day challenge, is featuring Mark Liu, not really with him, but me taking away some cool quotes that he shared in another video with Starter Story. Anyway, his 2026 goal is make all startups AI first, and he's starting with DataFast, a product that both Luca and Ben are using. I didn't submit this, so Ben, I think you did, right? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. I submitted it, and the reason why I submitted it was because of the last line, which is AI assistants will do the UI. So we've been talking a lot about on this episode about front ends and what the importance of front ends will look like. And basically, Mark Liu is saying that front ends actually mean less, right? So we're all theorizing, should the front end change to be more dynamic? Should the front end be like a mission control kind of for all your apps and all your workflows? Well, Mark is saying like, no, there may not be a front end in the way that we think about it. Instead, actually, he's leaning super into the CLI. So even this week, I use DataFast, love that product. There was an announcement that he created like a CLI. So that's actually, even though it shows it's in progress, like I saw that I got that within DataFast yesterday. He is trying to make everything in the form of where AI agents can use his products as well as possible. He did also just come from Stripe Connect, and one of the other indie hackers that was there is this guy named Jack Fricks, who I think I told you, Rick, he's building a product called Postbridge, and Jack for the last month or two has been saying, I'm going to double the revenue of my business by leaning super into AI agents and having other agents be able to use Postbridge, in his case, to be able to post on all of their social medias. So I think maybe Mark got a little bit AI pilled by Jack, perhaps at the conference, because they were hanging out a bunch. And then I can see whether it's MCP, CLI, the OpenAI endpoints, all of that. But what I find super interesting also is this generative UI. Like, what does that look like? I think that is kind of what we were talking about also on this pod, where the user experience for various customers varies, and you basically can now drill down to the ICP level when showing an application to someone. There will be almost this there's a company called Revenue Cat or Superwall that help build the perfect paywalls, and up until this point, people have done a lot of ABC testing when it comes to paywalls, but that's now going to go beyond the paywall to other parts of the application.
Luca, what do you think?
Yeah.
On this tweet, what caught my eye was the first two things he mentioned, which is open all API endpoints and LLMs.txt and Markdown docs. As you guys might remember, last summer I built a small project, Thundercrawl, that was in this niche of LLMs.txt. I'm not sure, actually, I still believe that that's worth doing, but both of them, including opening the API endpoints, I believe are an SEO play or an AI SEO play. For the open all API endpoints, what that allows for your website is so that when someone is like searching on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, these LLMs can call your API endpoints to get the data about your websites. And when you see them thinking, this is more likely for your websites to appear in them thinking. I noticed it with one of my latest projects. And what I know is that usually in standard practice, a lot of these API endpoints are closed for security. So people can't take all of your data. But in today's world, you want your website to be as accessible as possible through an API, so that it is indexed much more easily by these AI engines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's the way forward. I think having open endpoints, having agents interact with your site, and potentially every interaction might become a revenue event, right? If you have valuable data that can be shared with agents somehow, and people want to make use of the data that you collected.
Yeah, and you'll be more likely to be listed as a source when people are asking about your sphere of influence or whatever.
Yeah, that's maybe the way to hack the agent SEO that Ben is trying to figure out as well. Next, we have the end of stock prices going up after announcing that they are laying off employees. We've seen a few cases over the past 10 weeks where you had big companies laying off employees and their stock price goes up. Now, this week we've seen two examples of stock prices going down after announcing that they're laying off employees. First, we had Coinbase. They went down after announcement of that they're cutting 10% of the staff. Maybe they also went down because they didn't hit the revenue targets. But Cloudflare's stock crashed 16% after hours after they announced that they're laying off 1,100 employees. Is this the end of the arbitrage between employees and stock going up, or is this just a coincidence that this happened this week? Any thoughts, boys? No, this is just the news then. Okay. Interesting observation. Next, we have Google launching Google Generational Run. Google actually has almost become almost the most valuable company in the world. It's only a few $100 billion away from Nvidia. A few $100 billion. Funny that I say it as it's just a little, but yeah, that's just one day of a green candle, right? But Google just announced that they're launching the Fitbit Air. I'm wearing a Whoop. I've been wearing this for 630 days. I have 100 days left on my subscription. And I say subscription specifically because I pay $260 per year for this thing. Now Google comes out and they price it at $99 with no subscription. It's so over for Whoop, people say. Is any of you wearing a wearable fitness tracker?
I have the Apple Watch. But I'm not as health focused. I'd say, Rick, you're probably pretty into that.
Yeah,
You've
so
got the Whoop and all. Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna, I think, very much change this whole the whole view of that. Like Whoop has been at the forefront of this, like the no screen trackers. There's some others. There's Oura Ring, and then there are others really tried. But what made Whoop stand out is like the analysis, right? The data and the analysis. But if Google now can offer a similar device with similar tracking and similar analysis, then for me there's not really a reason to continue paying 2.5 times more for a Whoop per year than I would pay for a one-time payment for the Google one. So I'm thinking the future here of Whoop. Either they have to have a very good response to this, or Whoop really becomes a status symbol. And yeah, I'm wondering if they're gonna respond to it. I have 110 days to decide if I'm gonna extend my subscription or not. So I'm gonna wait a bit until there's enough reviews on YouTube before I make the decision. But it's another decision that I'll have to make pretty soon.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about this is it is smart that Google is, they partnered with Steph Curry. I think there's also a band for $130. That's like the Steph Curry band, right? And I think Google like acquired Fitbit a long time ago, 5 to 10 years ago, I think. But they just had a really bad branding problem with it, where it was kind of like the fitness tracker for like not so fit people. Right? And so I think
Yes.
this version, the Fitbit Air, is really going after Whoop, where it's way sleeker. It almost looks like a Whoop. You could be looking at it on someone's wrist and you may think, oh, is that a Whoop or not? So it has that kind of like branding identity thing. Um, but to your point, Rick, like a lot of people in the fitness world, they love the Whoop not because of the hardware aspect, but because of the data, right? And the software and the app and how it, just connects with everything and is really able to tell you how fit you are and your age, right? Your biological age seems like an amazing feature. And I'd love to see what how this works with the Fitbit Air.
The whole thing was that the data is very closed off and you couldn't really access your data externally. Also, it's called Fitbit Air. So if I'm thinking about Apple naming, you have the MacBook Air, you have the MacBook Pro. Maybe the Fitbit Pro is going to be announced soon, and is this just a test case? Who knows, right? Luca, last one on this topic?
Yeah, just the last line that it's powered with Gemini. That's obviously an advantage compared to Whoop. And then obviously a one-time price then makes me think that obviously the users will be a bit of the product and they'll be able to improve their service based on what data they collect. But yeah,
Exactly. The
I'm
powered by
personally like a positive outlook for how and AI can overlap. So I think that in
very
general
much.
will net good.
The powered by Gemini, I read that this is included for Gemini Pro users or Google Pro users, and it would be $10 for non-Google subscribers per month for having that. But so, yeah, it's another way to that they can lock in users into their Gemini ecosystem, right? Next up, we have Neuralink showing how the operations would happen. The insertions of the Neuralink by a robot. Let's just play this video and see how beautiful and detailed this thing will work. I personally would prefer a robot putting something in my brain than a human, but I've never really saw how this would happen. Any Luca, you're the science corner guy, right? No, like Neuralink is also making quite a lot of uh progressions, it seems,
Yeah,
Elon.
I think I'm reading online that basically 21 people now in 4 countries have a Neuralink chip. They're able to type at 40 words per minute, which I don't know if you guys have ever done a typing test, but most people basically can't do even 40 words per minute. So um, this thing is unlocking the ability to basically interact with a computer today. And it's been reliably tested. I mean, look, on a small set of people, but nothing wrong has happened so far, at least that has been like broadly publicized. That's an amazing, exciting thing for, I think, like the future of computing. And I know we've talked about a lot, like what does the next form of computing look like? Is it going to be some sort of, Apple has the Vision Pro, or is it the glasses? But to me, this type of thing, at least on the input side, I don't know about you guys, but I get so frustrated sometimes with my phone and being like, why am I using my fingers to type? Surely there's a better way to be able to input stuff into the computer. If Neuralink has even figured out the input way to be able to get things into a device from your mind in a reliable and fast way, that's an incredibly exciting thing. And I think we said that the last valuation was something like $43 billion. I would be investing in that, right? I don't know of any other company that's gotten this far along. And this video also just shows how precisely they're able to insert the electrons, kind of like the receptors, into the brain. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, for now, it's only kind of, yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
The next
from
incredible. Oh,
from its timeline, it's still obviously a medical device, so it's still being used in medical treatments that are being tested. But these are just the stepping stones, right? So first, this technology needs to be proved to be effective at curing certain disabilities. But conceptually, this can then be expanded into the consumer market. That is a bit science fiction. But from the timelines of it, I mean, it seems on track. And I mean, it looks like in our lifetime, we might have this as an option to access our devices.
Yeah, then the
Which is
question
insane.
becomes like, would you have your kids plant this in? Maybe this is a question for Alan. I think you're closest to having kids from us four. Would you like, because if you compare it, like the kids that have this implemented and they figured out the input thing, how to input something from your brain into a computer, the kids that have this will just be so far ahead of kids that don't. Or like people as well, right? Like if you have to compete with someone on an interview for a job and you have a Neuralink, I would 100% hire the Neuralink kid, you know? Is that fair competition?
Yeah, I should say me and Maria are not planning on kids, but on the on the all this, it's to me it's fascinating this, because it's like already our phones are like this extension of us. We're like almost these cyborgs. Now technology is going into our brains. To what extent could you have your own world model in your own brain at some point if, you know, Jevons paradox applies to the size of chips, you know, and you know, we get it embedded into our brain, and then suddenly you have you implant the ability to have 200 IQ into your brain. This is all extreme sci-fi stuff that we just never would have thought of when we were kids, right? And now it's just happening. So yeah, I'm with you. I would hire the cyborg to do my knowledge work or to be my employees, and no doubt.
Exactly. And we stay in the sci-fi because SpaceX, again, Elon, they started, I think, what is this? They started testing the full thrust 33 engine static fire with Super Heavy V3. And I think this is what's going to power the Starship. So this is actually what's going to send those million people to Mars so that Elon gets his paycheck. It's an impressive video if you look at it, like the static, how this is just a piece of art. Look at that. Rocket firing. This looks AI generated, honestly. Like, this doesn't look real. Like, what the fuck is happening here? No way. Right? That's
Whilst
just...
we're watching the rocket launch,
No,
one
that's
thing
not the
that's
rocket launch. This is them testing the thrusters that are gonna power the biggest rocket ever built, and that's gonna bring us to Mars in a few years from now. There's another viewpoint from the top. Look at this. Boom, thrusts out.
It's crazy to me that this company that we're watching is also striking a deal with Anthropic to sell GPUs, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's wild to me that this is the same company, that we can like call it the same organization, and that they have the same overarching goal. Like, on the surface, that just makes no sense. When you break it down into these little pieces and components, it makes some amount of sense, but it's just such a grand vision. It almost reminds me of kind of Kalanick, right? We've talked about the atoms and like this kind of transport, and then the data centers aspect. Really, I think Elon is building with SpaceX the ultimate atoms company, from being able to transport us from this world of bits to atoms, right?
Is this proof that if you can think it, you can do it? And Elon is just the living example of thinking or believing in something is possible and then actually designing everything around it to make it happen? Because like that's sort of what it looks like. The interview that I sent you guys yesterday, I think it was a 2007 interview from Elon, where he is talking about bringing people to Mars, where he is talking about his future vision 19 years ago, almost 20 years ago now, right? And now you see it playing out. So like he's been planning all of this, I think since his early days, to be honest. The interviewer asked him like, what's your vision of the future, or your company's like, you already disrupted sort of the internet and internet payments. What's next? And he's like, interplanetary and energy. And boom, here he is, right? he did it. If you can think it, you can do it. And the most entertaining scenario is probably what's what's gonna happen. Last story of the day, guys, and we have a very long here. I can understand that you're tired, but we have to address this. Half stock, half cash. Have you seen the meme? Have you heard the meme? Half stock, half cash. Let me just find the exact video so we can just play it first, and then let's discuss. Half stock, half cash. Did you see my meme, by the way? So, so they made the meme half cash, half stock.
Yeah.
Then I changed it to half cash, half
Yeah.
pork. Anyway.
And then the cash that gets you to 20. You have this letter from TD. That's another 20. We're now at 40, but we're still off by, call it 16. And the 20, as far as I understand, while it's considered a highly confident letter, meaning TD saying they're highly confident that they would provide the financing, it's not locked financing.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
What an answer.
I hear you. I understand that. I'm just trying to understand where the rest of the money would come from.
Cash, half stock.
I hear you. I'm just saying that math doesn't get you to the price that you're offering.
So,
Right, and that's a pretty
what do
straightforward
you-
question.
so what
I
do you
don't get it. Like, where's the rest of the money coming from? Andrew laid it out
I-
pretty clearly.
I don't understand your question. We're offering half cash, half stock, and we have the ability to issue stock in order to get the deal done. But the full details of
Massively
the
blue.
offer are on our website.
So this video has been going viral. A little bit of context is this guy is the GameStop CME, the GameStop GME CEO, Ryan Cohen, and he made an offer basically to buy eBay. The funny side context or the context is that eBay has a bigger market cap or a higher value than GME actually has. And then he is saying that he's going to offer half cash, half stock, and the math doesn't really make sense. Now, this has been going super viral, and the whole timeline, at least my timeline, was full of this. And I found it very fascinating. And this guy managed to just stay top of mind for a few days, looking at after this interview, he done a bunch of other interviews, and then he started selling stuff on eBay to pay for eBay. So like he's just living the meme right now, right? The video was a meme, then he is tweeting the meme. He's generating millions and millions of views on his tweets. If you look at it, Ryan Cohen is like, you can see it from a perspective. He's a marketing genius, currently trending with over 100 million views. GameStop's own post has generated nearly 60 million views, while the new eBay proposal is estimated to have driven over 40 million additional views across social media. It's going viral everywhere. It's trending on Google. It's trending. Everything is trending. Guys, what are your opinions here before I share mine?
I just think the almost my favorite takeaway from that is when a journalist asks you to report something that they should be reporting, just tell them to read your website and don't be their parrot. Essentially, I thought that his way of handling the interview was very much controlled and tactical, and very often journalists try to manipulate you to get you to say their sound bites that they want you to say, and he was very effective at making them say what he wants them to say. So that's my only takeaway. I don't know about how much of a valid offer or how much substance there is to what's going on. But yeah, the viral marketing side was clearly because he knew exactly what he was doing and calculated every sentence.
The more I look into this, first of all, Rick, if you notice what his handle is, Ryan 50/50. Why do we think it's 50/50? Half cash.
Yes,
half
exactly.
Yeah. Which I just picked up on, which is hilarious. So like everything was crafted. Like the more I look into this was like a genius, well thought out thing by someone who really understands,
Power
like
of
how
organic
important
marketing, right?
Yeah. organic marketing, the attention economy, all of that stuff is, right? Like he's fully leaned into this. And I mean, I went down like his Wikipedia rabbit hole, right? This guy was one of the co-founders of Chewy.com. He made $5 billion from that. Chewy is like the Amazon for pets, basically. And then I think in 2018, I don't know, something happened, but he left the company there. I'm not sure if he was forced out or he left, but this guy like understands how to run a business. But then come 2021, 2022, when we were in the ZERP era and everyone was trying to buy every type of collectible, he aped into eBay, right? And he put in like, he became one of the biggest shareholders. I want to say he owned 5 to 10% of the company. Like this was while Wall Street Bets was, really hyping up that whole company, GameStop. And then the more I kind of listen and like think about this like thesis, well, eBay is where Pokemon cards are being sold, trading cards are being sold, all of these collectibles, right? So GameStop, while they sell, video games and certain, let's say, physical assets that are potentially collectibles, like a very old PlayStation could be worth something. Really, I think Ryan Cohen understands this meme culture extremely well.
Yes.
And he sees that eBay is the middleman, the intermediary for this whole kind of meme economy. He doesn't see it going away in the future. A few things that I did notice is like he uses the word I a lot in interviews, and he's got kind of this, Luca, you mentioned in our group chat, this Machiavellian complex to him a little bit. But I gotta like tip my hat to him because like GameStop is probably only going to benefit from this. Maybe they'll get into some legal troubles, but I think the attention that GameStop got from this. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I think like I've been building this case in my head for the past few days, and I think I see it here. There is a lot of speculation on the timeline about numbers as well. GME, Roaring Kitty. Not gonna go into that yet, but if we look at it, so he has been playing on eBay. He's been selling his stuff. He's been generating millions and millions and millions of views. But his whole point is that the current capex and even just the marketing spend of eBay, they spent $3.2 billion on marketing, and their platform only grew by 1 million users of this marketing spend, meaning eBay spent $3,200 per new user acquired. Doesn't even matter if the user actually bought something on eBay. User acquisition cost $3,200 per user. Like, run a pay-per-click campaign on Facebook, right? You probably do better. So his whole standpoint is, I can run this business way more efficient. He probably generated more views with his tweets that he did than the whole marketing campaign that eBay did for 3.2 billion actually generated. More people went to sign up and to buy and to bid on his stuff. He posts something on eBay and it just gets bid, which is insane. But then what you're saying there as well, Ben, I think he sees the value in bringing digital and physical together, where eBay is the auction and GameStop has the physical locations. Now, see this scenario. I'm a collector. I have stuff that I want to sell. I don't really know how to get started. I go to a GameStop place and I say, hey, I want to sell this Pokemon card. I go there and I expect to get $50 for it, right? I think, oh, it's a little bit valuable. Now, if GameStop and eBay are one, they can literally throw it on auction straight away, and this person could walk out with $1,000 because online bids just flow in on that card, right? So you have this mechanism bring online and offline together, which is like, I think that's a genius thing, and you don't need much marketing for that. You just need the crypto space to pick up on that. Basically, right now, like everyone who was collecting NFTs back in the days is now on Pokemon cards, right? And this you can buy it, you can gamble on them online. You can then get them sent to your place. But all of that anyway, that's one side. So that's one side of the story, bridging digital and physical. And the second thing is, apparently they've been secretly stacking up huge derivative positions in eBay way before they announced it, racking up hundreds of millions behind the scenes. Now, they only bought 25,000 shares, but they bought close to 25 million shares as derivative contracts. So just alone by announcing this news, they're already up like 100 billion, I think, into 100 million in value and unrealized profits just by this little game that he's playing here, right? So he's winning anyway. It doesn't really matter what the outcome is. He is winning. And then I think Ben pointed out as well that he has a certain pay package to, like, he's not really getting paid anything except for if he hits certain targets. And the targets are that it's certain revenue targets. So it doesn't really matter that stocks get diluted, which may be not good for the shareholders, but it's like in general, he can only win in this whole thing, and he's kind of playing it out. One of the last things is this is another explainer anyway, that people are, where is it? Oh, it's here. New screen. People are speculating on the date of May 12th and May 13th could be a significant date for GameStop. This marks 2 years since Roaring Kitty's return, and Ryan Cohen's eBay listings that he's been publishing come to an end at the same day. If you remember this meme 2 years ago, Roaring Kitty, the guy who started the whole GameStop saga on Reddit, this was in 2020 even, December 2020. He returned in 2024 and GameStop ripped, right? On the 12th and the 13th of May, this has been 2 years ago. And this is the exact same date that Ryan's listings expire on eBay. Now, what does Ryan know that we don't? What does Ryan know that the world doesn't know? He has something behind his sleeve. He knows something is going to happen, and he is expecting the stock price to hit the price he needs to be able to pay half stock, half cash. And that's what I'm expecting. So I'm very excited for the date 12-13 May. Maybe also a bit scared because I don't know what's coming. But it's just like there's so many data points. Oh, and the last data point is something with Trump. Somehow Trump is involved here. But a perfect circle, someone figured this out. Ryan Cohen thinks 2 years ahead. Ryan posts Trump 665 times. 65 days from the 17th of July lands on May 13. So another confirmation that May 13 something might happen. This was his tweet. People going to find out. I don't know. But yeah. It's just too many
If this
things
is all
that are
true, Ryan is the weirdest person I've met in my life
Yeah,
or
bro.
heard of in my life. Because this is way too Illuminati. But fucking hell, like
Exactly.
yeah.
But that's why I just couldn't stop
I
thinking
do
about
agree
it.
with your point that it was like a no-lose scenario for him to do this because he stacked up on the equity, ripped the news and the viral trend out there. If he succeeds, GameStop acquires eBay. If he doesn't, he pumped stock that he already owns.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and if he buys eBay in the end and he saves $3 billion in marketing spend on a yearly basis, that's $3 billion that could be put into whatever cash reserves that could yield instead of being spent, and then also cutting out 90% of the staff that's not useful in this whole business, that he is literally saying I can run this from my bedroom. Well, yeah, Ryan, I want to see what's going to happen on May 12th, May 13th. I'm excited. Maybe we should dabble into some GameStop stock in the meantime. But yeah, not financial advice. I believe in the idea of merging physical and digital. I believe in the collectors. I was part of the NFT craze. I unfortunately didn't really jump out at the right time, but hey, it made me see that there is a lot of value in scarce assets. And yeah, maybe one more thing is that indeed, like the kids from now, they much rather buy vintage clothes, for example, than going to Zara. And that's another thing, right? Like you're buying it on eBay, it gets sent to GameStop locations. You can go and test it out. Like you don't really have to trust a rando to send it to your door, and then maybe it doesn't fit or it's not like it's advertised. So like that's just a little addition, but hey, I can continue talking about this. We are 2 hours in, guys. This was the God Mode Pod, episode 12. Hopefully this one hits 1,000 views on YouTube. That would be in line with our growth trajectory, because I am the greatest moderator and I have the best co-host. Thank you, friend of the pod, Alan, for joining us and staying for so long. I think it's already late in Philippines, so it's bad time for you. And yeah, we see you guys next week. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Cheers.
All right.
Coding an app is the new starting a podcast. We are 3 dudes. We just started a podcast.
It's incredibly reckless in this world to not learn AI.
And everything is code. I recently realized everything is code. Luca, what are you predicting?
Underwater drones run by PicoClaw.
Okay. Wow, bombshell. Using AI to write your prompt, bro. Come on. I am the greatest moderator in the world, and we see you guys next week. Love you, besties.